Good evening, everyone! The video you just saw, that was made by me and my friends back in my school in China. And that's how we were singing the This Is Me in a very different and unique language. You know, it was when we were singing, not with the spoken words, but with our hand gestures, with our facial expressions, and with our entire body movement in American Sign Language. And that is also something that I want to bring here today to all of you. I want to ask all of you here a question. How do you say hello? Oh, I can see you waving. Maybe you're waving, right? Maybe you just simply say hello. Maybe you would nod and bow. Or maybe if you're that overtly extroverted kind of friend, you would yell, "What's up, bro?" from across the street with zero shame. Or maybe, if you're like my mom, your eyes would light up with a bright smile, and that is hello to you. Hi, my name is Bùi Ngọc Đức Thiện, or you can call me Gabby, and I was born and raised in the Central Highlands of Vietnam. And for the most part of my childhood, I was growing up with my lovely single mom, who's over there as well. Hi, Mom! Hello! And something about my mom is that she's a wonderful woman. And also, when she was during her 20s, she was diagnosed with autosclerosis, which made her left ear completely deaf, and which made her right ear dramatically losing its hearing ability over time. Which means that she has to depend on her technology, which, by the way, is incredibly expensive to us in order to be able to hear. But even though her hearing ability is still not comparable at all to the normal hearing person. And without the technology, she's just unable to hear anything at all on earth. But something always surprises people when they talk about my mom is that she doesn't know any Vietnamese sign language at all. Like, no. The reason? It's just simply because she was not taught. You know, in every school that she's been to, there's no Vietnamese sign language classes. And there were just very few or no Vietnamese integrators in the live TV shows and movies. And even if she does learn Vietnamese sign language, there's just no one, literally no one, even her closest friends and families and relatives that she can talk to. But that's when my mom decided to make her own language. You know, that's the language that we share together, using the facial expressions, using our hand gestures. We point together, we point to everything, we mind together, we read each other like a book. And that's how we talk together. And I believe that's the language that she built from her own resilience, from her own desire to connect with people. But right now, you know, from her, I learned something very important, that language is not only about speaking, it is also about connecting. It's about seeing people as who they are. And talking about connection, there's a very beautiful layer of the deaf community that I want to share to you today. You know, in the deaf community, we call people and we see and we name individuals by something called the sign name. Unlike the spoken names, the sign names, they are actually a very unique visual identifier of a person. It can represent their own, maybe, personality. It can represent their own physical trait, or even the memorable interactions between them and a person. And it's usually given to the hearing or the normal hearing person, or the deaf person, by the member in the deaf community. And 2 years ago, I had the very lovely opportunity to meet a very cute deaf teacher in Suzhou, China. And she gave to me a sign name, which is, my name is Gabby. So this brown circle represents for my brown glasses, and this movement represents for my bright smile and the shining charisma, as she told me. And that just, you know, it's not only a name to me, but it's more than that. It's more like a visual story. It's more like something that represents how I look to her and to the people surrounding me. That's why I'm very grateful for it and carry it along the way as my journey. But right now, You might be surprised to learn that even the very well-known and renowned figures on the world, they might have their own sign name as well. For example, let's do a challenge right now. If I have the letter G and I have the word searching, can you guess what that means? I want to hear some guesses from you. Oh yeah, I heard something. That's right, that is Google. You can see the sign language, the sign name, it can just come from something very daily, right? It just comes from something very familiar and close to us. And that's where I began to learn that when you learn the sign language, you're not connecting with people only. You're actually engaging with them. You're engaging with their rich cultures, with their shared human experiences. You know, for example, let's say in our normal speaking language, it can take us a very long time for us to really discover the deep and different layers of our diverse backgrounds, right? But in the sign language, the way that the sign is formed, the way that it's going and moving in the space, it can tell us a lot about the culture, about history, about the customs, and even just about how they think and how they live daily. That's something very interesting about sign language. Let's take an example. Where are we right now? Đắk Lắk, right? So in Đắk Lắk province, we are very famous for something called the steel house. That's right, nhà rồng. So that's why when it comes to people and they say that, hi, my name is Gabby and I'm come from Đắk Lắk. That's how they know something very unique about our old city, right? What about something even more culture and internationalism? How do you say hello, but in different languages? For example, hi, in Vietnamese sign language, we're gonna say that with the very energizing way. Xin chào. What about, let's say, in Chinese sign language, we're gonna say 您好, right? So, 您 means you, and 好 means good. 您好. What about Korean sign language? 안녕하세요. You can see. And let's talk about Japan right now. In Japan, let's think about a clock. And your hands, they're like the clock hands. Tick tock, tick tock. Konnichiwa. Konnichiwa. And that's how you say konnichiwa in Japanese sign language. Now let's come to somewhere even more Western, America. In America, you're just gonna say, hello, what's up, bro? And let's talk about the most romantic and lovely language in the world, Français. In French, you're gonna say, bonjour. You can see, it's just so incredible how the sign language and even the word hello can be very different and be very diverse in different languages, right? And that's just something very interesting that I figured out along the way. And that realization about the very unique nature of the sign language that made me 2 years ago that I joined the Deaf Community Project back in my high school in China. And that's where I first started learning American Sign Language and then Chinese Sign Language. And then I started inspiring and teaching others as well. But in the process of learning, I began to unlearn something as well. I began to unlearn the idea that language is just about words. No, I think indeed, language, it can be in the movement. It can live in the space. It can live in the silence. You know, for the deaf signers, everything is directional. The time is directional. For example, if we say in the past, I am literally going in the past, going backwards. If I say, hey, I want to give you the book, I would say that to you. I want to give her the book, for example. Can you give me the book? It's just very directional, right? And the grammar is visual and everything just living between us. And for the deaf signers, they do not only try to hold the conversations, they actually add it, they actually simulate them in the 3 dimensions. And let's give a moment to think about what is the impact of that on our own growth and development. Interestingly, in 2021, a professor named Lorna Dawes, she conducted a study and figured out that the deaf children who grew up using the sign language, they actually have the brain development, they actually have the spatial reasoning, and also the mental rotation much, much better than their hearing counterparts. And I believe that it's just not a coincidence, but it's indeed how the languages surrounding us can shape the way that we think and behave. It can change our own mindset and our own thoughts, right? And that's why we say that when we learn a new language, it's actually we are opening a real whole world. But now here comes the question. What if you are deaf and you are growing up without the access to the sign language education? What happens? Might be like my mom. Just imagine growing up in a world that was not built for you. Growing up in a world that makes you feel like you're invisible. There's just so many confusion. There's just so many misunderstandings that can happen in our daily conversations. But in that sense, she also learns to adapt to it. She learns to observe more carefully, to live with the people. But you know for a fact that even the live with experts, they can only read about 1/3 accurately of the whole conversations. It's just so painful. It hurts so much to live in that world. What about, let's talk about somewhere in China. There are just so many remote communities in China that the people, they cannot have access to the standardized education of sign language. And if I come to them and I say, 你好, 你叫什么名字? They're just gonna look at me with such confusion and frustration, like, 什么? What are you talking about? Because they just don't know the language that we're talking about. But indeed, they're actually growing up a new form of language, which is called the natural sign language. They form a language just within their own village and their own community to talk to each other. It's actually a real language. It's just that the whole world doesn't know about it, and we just cannot access with them. But when I think about that twice, I realize that humans, we always try to find the way to develop a language between us together, right? And maybe that's where your own language can begin. You know, it's just from the fact that we want to stand here between two people, and we just want to say, hello, I'm standing here. I see you. Do you see me? Can you talk to me? I want to talk to you. I want to connect with you. As humans, we always have that desire to connect with each other. And here, and you know, something very interesting about my journey is that when I share to people that I learned American Sign Language, I learned Chinese Sign Language, and now my mom and I, we want to learn Vietnamese Sign Language together so that we can have someone to share with. The question that will always ask me is, why don't the whole world use one universal language? I mean, we are just using the hands right now, right? So we can actually just use one language so the whole world can connect together. But I guess it's not true. The truth is that even, you know, across the countries, there are just so many different languages. Even in America, in the USA specifically, there are more than 10 different variations of American Sign Language. And different sign language, they have different system of vocabulary, different system of grammar, and even different system of logic within them. But something is that humans, they will always try to find a way to connect together. They will always try to find a way to talk together, even when denied access, even in the silence, even when the whole world comes to them and says that this language doesn't matter. It does. It really does. Do you know for a fact that sign language has been banned in America? It used to be banned in America for almost 50 years. And now, what I strongly believe is that language is not only a way for us to connect with each other, it's actually a fundamental human right. And that's the reason why, because the language, they can open a whole world of thoughts, a a whole world of culture, of history, of different customs, and living behaviors. That's why I don't only want the awareness. We need the real actions. We need the real actions in our families, in our communities, in our schools. Because I want the sign language not only be available, it needs to be developing and thriving. When it comes to the TED speech today, I want to leave you with one final thought. I want to challenge all of you here today to change the way that you think about the deaf people, but also about the whole world in general. You know, remember, back in your kindergarten, back in your primary school, back in your high school, back in everywhere, you always learned that there are two types of people: normal people and abnormal people, who are disabled people. We learned to stick them with the social stigma that they are someone different from the rest of the world. They are someone as a leg, they are someone deficit, they are someone as an inability in the society. But what I strongly believe is that what we view as inability is just the diverse ability. I think that we are just born with different forms of powers, different forms of intelligence, and different forms of abilities that we have ourselves. And that's what makes us humans unique for each one of us. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this speech with your eyes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for letting the language move you. And right now, if you see anyone and you want to say hello to them, well, just show them that you see them and you want to connect with them. And I guess that's where your own language will begin to grow. Thank you so much.